They laughed at Nia Carter, a black woman in a janitor's uniform, as she walked into the gleaming lobby of Summit Enterprises. Her dark skin, natural curls, and quiet confidence stood out in a place where she was expected to blend into the background. Executives brushed past her without so much as a glance, their eyes trained upward toward power and profit. But Nia wasn't there to clean their floors. She was there to claim what they thought she could never have, the very company they ruled over. This is the story of a woman who defied prejudice, shattered expectations, and rose from the bottom to control it all. If you believe power belongs to those who dare to take it, hit the like button and subscribe. Stay tuned to uncover how Nia Carter turned their world upside down and left the CEO without a chair to sit in. The lobby of Summit Enterprises was a shrine to wealth and power, its marble floors gleaming under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Glass walls displayed modern art pieces worth more than most workers' yearly salaries, while a grand staircase spiraled toward the executive offices above. It was the kind of space designed to remind everyone who entered where they stood in the hierarchy. Nia Carter wheeled her cleaning cart across the pristine floor, her every step met with indifference from the polished suits bustling around her. Junior employees scurried by with their heads down, their anxious eyes avoiding contact with anyone above their rank. Meanwhile, executives strode confidently, their conversations filled with stock prices and expansion plans, as if the world beyond their glass towers didn't exist. To them, Nia was invisible, just another figure meant to fade into the background. But as she caught her reflection in the glossy elevator doors, she allowed herself a faint, knowing smile. This was her stage now, and she understood the game better than anyone. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. The ones who build these empires often remain unseen, but without them, nothing stands. She pressed the elevator button and watched the numbers climb. Each ding reminded her of the years she had spent preparing for this moment, studying every detail of Summit Enterprises from the shadows. Today wasn't about cleaning, it was about seeing the cracks in their carefully polished empire. Nia Carter wasn't born into privilege. Her story began in a cramped two-bedroom apartment on the edge of a forgotten neighborhood, where her mother, a cleaning lady, worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. Nia grew up watching her mother scrub floors for people who barely acknowledged her presence, yet always held her head high. "Know your worth even when they don't," her mother used to say, words that became the backbone of Nia's resilience. From a young age, Nia understood the weight of being black in America. She noticed how people avoided looking at her mother, how they spoke down to her as though she were less than human. Those memories stayed with her, fueling a quiet fire. At school, she refused to let the stereotypes define her. She studied harder, stayed later, and dreamed bigger than anyone expected. By the time she graduated at the top of her high school class, people were finally starting to notice what her mother always saw in her, a woman destined for greatness. But the road ahead wasn't smooth. At college, and later at business school, she was often the only black woman in the room. Professors underestimated her, classmates ignored her ideas until someone else repeated them, and recruiters assumed she couldn't fit the mold. But Nia was unshakable. Each slight, each doubting look only sharpened her focus. During her time in business school, Nia discovered her true calling, not to follow the rules of the game, but to learn how to change them. She spent late nights poring over case studies, analyzing how corporations like Summit Enterprises operated. Her goal wasn't just to succeed in the system, it was to understand how to break it open and rebuild it in a way that recognized people like her mother. Over the years, through careful planning and strategic investments, Nia quietly began buying shares of Summit Enterprises. No press, no announcements, just relentless progress. By the time anyone realized what she was doing, she had already become the majority shareholder. Today, as the elevator doors opened to the executive floor, Nia took a deep breath. This wasn't just about power or revenge. It was about justice, about making sure that the voices ignored for so long could finally be heard. Her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. She wasn't just stepping onto a new floor, she was stepping into a legacy, one built not on arrogance, but on dignity. Nia Carter stepped onto the executive floor, the polished glass walls reflecting her calm yet resolute expression. The air here was heavy with authority, filled with conversations about profit margins, market shares, and expansion. She pushed her cleaning cart along the pristine hallways, her presence unnoticed, or perhaps deliberately ignored, by the executives who walked past her as if she didn't exist. To them, she was just another invisible cog in the machine, not worth a second glance. As she moved closer to the largest conference room, the voices of junior staff trickled into her ears. "Did you see the new cleaning lady?" one whispered, barely concealing their disdain. "Yeah," another replied, their tone thick with indifference. "She's not going to last." "They never do." Nia's grip tightened on the cart's handle, but her steps remained steady. She had heard words like these all her life. The sneers, the whispers, the dismissals, they no longer shocked her, but they never stopped cutting. It wasn't just about her, it was about people like her mother, whose work built this empire but who were never acknowledged for it. Reaching the conference room, Nia paused outside, her sharp eyes observing the scene within. Through the glass walls, she saw the faces of those in power. Martin Reed, the CEO, sat confidently at the head of the table, his silver hair and tailored suit radiating authority. To his left was Ethan Blake, the CFO, his smirk betraying the cold calculations always turning in his mind. Cole Bennett, the head of marketing, leaned back with a satisfied grin, his gestures animated as he spoke. And Victor Hayes, the operations manager, sat stiffly, his stern demeanor matching his reputation for efficiency at all costs. Their conversation carried clearly through the glass, the laughter loud and self-assured. "Hard work pays off," Martin declared, his grin widening. "Smart work, you mean?" Ethan corrected, lifting his coffee mug. "And by smart, I mean knowing when to cut costs without worrying about complaints." Cole chuckled. "Exactly. It's not like the janitors are going to form a union or anything," Victor added. "Some people are just meant to stay at the bottom. Life's not fair, but that's how it works." Their laughter echoed through the hallway. Nia stood still, her face impassive, but her mind raced. Every word reminded her of why she was here, not to prove them wrong, but to dismantle the system that allowed such arrogance to thrive. They spoke as though the labor of people like her mother didn't matter, as though their success was built entirely on their own brilliance. As she turned to continue her rounds, she noticed a young black intern lingering nearby, her eyes darting nervously toward the conference room. When their gazes met, the intern hesitated before whispering, "Don't let them get to you." Nia smiled faintly, her voice steady but warm. "Thank you," she said. "Sometimes the ones who think they know everything are the ones with the most to learn." The intern nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. That brief moment of solidarity reminded Nia of herself years ago, full of ambition but surrounded by unspoken barriers. It was a fleeting connection, but it reaffirmed her purpose. Walking further down the hallway, Nia's thoughts drifted back to her mother. She could still see her, kneeling on tiled floors, her hands raw from scrubbing but her spirit unbroken. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Know your worth, Nia. Even when they don't." She returned to the conference room, her reflection staring back at her in the glass walls. This wasn't about proving a point. It was about reclaiming dignity, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been overlooked. Inside, the executives continued to talk, their arrogance filling the room like smoke. They thought they understood power, but they were wrong. Power wasn't about the title on your door or the size of your paycheck. True power came from understanding every layer of the system, from the top floor to the janitor's closet, and knowing exactly how to dismantle it. Nia took a deep breath, her resolve solidifying. They laughed at people like her, people they thought could never rise. But today, Nia Carter wasn't here to rise. She was here to turn their entire world upside down. The glass doors to the conference room opened, and Nia Carter walked in, her cleaning cart left behind in the hallway. The executives barely noticed her at first, too engrossed in their conversation about quarterly bonuses and shareholder profits. Martin Reed, the CEO, leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped together, as he delivered what seemed to be another self-congratulatory speech. Then, one by one, their eyes turned toward her. The silence that followed was sharp, almost jarring. Martin cleared his throat, his silver brows furrowing. "Can we help you?" he asked, his tone laced with irritation. Nia stepped forward, calm and deliberate. "Actually, Mr. Reed, I'm here for the meeting," she replied. The room froze. Martin exchanged a bewildered look with Ethan Blake, the CFO, whose smirk wavered into confusion. "Excuse me?" Martin said, leaning forward slightly, his voice heavy with incredulity. "Yes," Nia said, her voice steady. "The meeting where I inform you that as of this morning, I am the majority shareholder of Summit Enterprises." A stunned silence filled the room. The confidence that had once defined these men evaporated in an instant. Martin's expression twisted into disbelief as he snatched the document Nia placed on the table. His hands trembled slightly as he scanned the words. Ethan leaned in closer, his eyes narrowing. Cole Bennett, the head of marketing, blinked rapidly, as though trying to process a language he didn't understand. Victor Hayes, the operations manager, crossed his arms tightly, his jaw clenching in denial. This can't be right," Martin muttered, his voice cracking. "How did you even—" "While you were busy laughing at people like me," Nia interrupted, her gaze unwavering. "I was working quietly, strategically. I've been preparing for this moment for years, and now, Summit Enterprises belongs to me." Her words landed like a thunderclap. The men stared at her, not with the indifference they had shown before, but with a mix of shock and fear. For the first time, they were forced to acknowledge her, not as a cleaning lady, but as a woman who had outmaneuvered them all. Cole leaned back, his face a mask of disbelief. "This has to be some kind of joke," he said, his voice shaky but laced with defiance. "You think you can just take over? Do you even know how to run a company like this?" Nia's lips curled into a faint smile. "You mean, do I know how to run the company that I now control? Yes, Mr. Bennett, I do. Unlike you, I've seen Summit Enterprises from every angle, from the ground floor to this very room. And I know exactly where it's broken." Victor scoffed, his frustration boiling over. "And what exactly do you plan to do with this supposed power?" Nia's gaze swept across the room, her voice calm yet resolute. "First, I plan to remind you all that power isn't about who sits at the head of this table. It's about responsibility. For too long, you've treated the people who make this company run as disposable. That changes today." Ethan folded his arms tightly, attempting to regain some control of the conversation. "And you think you're the one to make those changes? What makes you think you're qualified?" Nia stepped closer to the table, her tone unwavering. "Because I've lived what your spreadsheets and reports will never show. I've seen the faces of the people you ignore, the ones who make this company function while you collect the rewards. That's why I'm here, not just to take control, but to rewrite the rules entirely." The weight of her words pressed down on the room, silencing any further protests. For years, these men had believed their authority was untouchable, their success inevitable. But now, they were forced to reckon with the reality that their positions had been built on fragile foundations that Nia Carter had quietly dismantled. Her voice softened slightly as she continued. "This isn't about revenge," she said. "This is about creating a company where every voice matters, where people are valued not just for their output, but for their humanity. That's the legacy I'm here to build." The room remained silent, the executive's arrogance now replaced with uncertainty. For the first time, they were no longer in control. Nia Carter had not only taken their power but had redefined it, reminding them, and everyone watching, that the underestimated often hold the greatest strength. As Nia Carter walked out of the boardroom, she wasn't greeted with applause or fanfare, only silence. The same silence that had once erased her presence now marked the undeniable shift in power. For years, these men had laughed at people like her mother, believing they could never rise above the roles society had assigned them. But Nia had proven them wrong. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hallway, each step a reminder of the journey she had taken to get here. She didn't just take power, she reclaimed it. And in doing so, she reminded all of us that true strength comes from knowing your worth, even when the world tries to make you forget it. This isn't just Nia's story, it's a testament to the power of resilience and the courage to rewrite the rules. It's a reminder to everyone watching, never let anyone tell you what you can or cannot achieve. If this story inspired you, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more tales of triumph, courage, and transformation. Tell us in the comments, what would you do if given the chance to rewrite the rules of your life?